What's my name today?
Steven.
My name's Steven today. It's not Squall. I didn't even check into my hotel yet, which is why I'm like half costumed, but whatever. This is.
Yeah, Megan. I'm Chad, everyone. Playing the AA meeting.
I'm Harrison, filling in for Iffy, who's originally the panelist, but she can't make it right now.
Yeah. Cool. So let's start off. Hi, crowd. So let's start off with what's coming up. Sorry.
Do we want to do rankings first?
Rankings. You want to start off with that?
Yeah.
Rankings?
Yeah.
Let's get a general idea of what you guys like here. So let's start from the bottom. Whose favorite is Final Fantasy 1? You got.
That's good.
That's good.
We're going by favorite, so you have to pick a favorite within the next 20 seconds.
You pick two favorites. We'll give you two.
Okay, we'll give you two. We'll give you two. Okay. Whose favorite is Final Fantasy 2?
You got one.
And we're obviously going in the Japanese order here.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about 3? Any 3? Just released on Ouya.
Yeah.
Okay. Getting. What about 4?
4 is good.
Yeah.
I like 4. Four's pretty good. That's like a pretty cool guy.
Okay, what about 5?
Here's where it starts getting good. Here's where it is.
6.
6.
Okay, now 7.
Oh, yeah, everyone in the room.
Yeah, pick 2.
We're not counting.
8. You have to.
Eight's okay.
Yeah. 9. A lot of 9 fans. Yeah, a lot of people like 9. 10. Yeah, 10 is most popular in Japan.
Are we doing spin up?
10 2.
It was flashy.
I think I liked it better this time.
Yeah. Anybody have 11 as a favorite?
Anyone played 11? I played 11.
You can have good experiences with it.
It's alright.
Like sometimes I'll bash it, and then people will be like loaded. So
It's like the most revenue making Final Fantasy game from what I hear.
Yeah.
Like everybody's paying.
Better than 14.
What about 12? 12.
2 people. I am playing 12 yet. International is awesome.
Got a lot of 12. What about 13? Any 13? Like you are just sucked out. What about any 13 to bed?
Sounds like the city of rhythm.
Yeah.
That's true.
Or Final Fantasy 20 years.
How about Crystal Grotto?
How about the trailer?
Yeah, we'll not include
Trailers
spin-offs.
for versus 13? Yeah.
Well, yeah. What about the trailers for versus 13? Noted. Yeah. Noted. Okay. So I guess we could go into spin-offs all day. There's so many. Yeah. Can I just mention my favorite and see if anybody else has a favorite? Okay.
No, do it.
Final Fantasy Tactics. Okay. So I guess one of the big things we want to talk about is just sort of the future of the franchise. E3 is coming up in like 2 weeks. There's a lot of stuff happening in terms of Final Fantasy.
Before we continue, we have a new panelist.
Yeah.
You should introduce yourself.
I'm Rachel.
Run into
You can talk when you're ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your favorite Final Fantasy?
Did you vote?
Yeah.
My favorite?
Yeah, favorite.
That's a tough up between
You can pick 2, 6 and 2.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's pretty common.
But yeah, so there is a lot going on in terms of the series. Just yesterday or the day before, they've announced that the re-release of 14 is coming, Realm Reborn. I think it's coming August 27th for both PC and PS3. Anybody here excited for that?
Yeah,
It looks good.
It's gonna be a part of my collection.
Yeah,
We
it
skipped
looks
that. Is
good.
anybody's favorite 14?
Yeah, does anybody actually like 14?
It was
Pre-release. Yeah, no, it looks good. I mean, people who have been in the beta have said, you know, it has tons of character customization. The world is really interesting. You want to explore it. People are mentioning that the crafting system is really innovative. Apparently, you have to equip like the right clothes in order to craft things now, which is really weird.
And 11 was kind of like that.
I mean, the praise is being good. Even for, like, it's nice to see. It looks like, for anybody who might be playing it on the PS3, although I imagine it's going to have a big PC user base, it looks like they've really put a lot of effort into gamepads this time around, just in terms of the controller layout. If you're all interested, you can actually look online. It's on YouTube. It's like a developer thing, whatever. So that's coming out. I guess other big things, we can save the big thing for last, but they're an eventual announcement. But we've got the remake of 10 and 10.2 coming out.
You guys excited to pay twice if you're on Vita?
Yeah. Any Vita owners here? Because apparently you have to buy it twice, or you have to buy both games separate. It's kind of weird. Yeah, I don't know why they wouldn't just sort of adopt the kind of model that PlayStation All-Stars used, where it's like if you buy the console version, you get the Vita, you know, sort of as a bonus or whatever. But no, not for this one. But that's coming along, even though it's been like 17 months in development or something like that. So that's coming.
What else do we expect at E3? Lightning Returns?
Yeah, Lightning Returns is okay. I got a question for like anybody here. Is anybody here like legitimately excited for Lightning Returns? Like,
Save it for my sister.
yeah, like actually. So I feel like it feels kind of like a bad thing because it's a new. I want to say it's almost like, I mean, it's a sequel to. You could essentially say it's 13.3, but I guess they don't want to call it that. Yeah, it essentially is, but it's surprising how low sort of the hype is for that game. You know, it has these, you see, like if you go to Best Buy, you have like ads up for it saying pre-order now or whatever, but nobody seems to really be talking about it, which is too bad, because I kind of dig the whole like Majora's Mask feel they're going for it, where it's like you have 13 days, you have to do all this, blah, blah, blah. I think it'll encourage lots of, you know, replay value.
They're probably just under lesson, because like before they would announce things like 2 years in advance, and we wouldn't hear anything for another 6 months, or everyone would forget about it.
Yeah.
But maybe they're setting a lot of hype for when it actually comes out.
Yeah.
It's like Q3 this year, I think.
Yeah, I think they said
Confirmed?
third quarter of this year, so sometime in the summer. I'm guessing that's gonna get delayed, but that's just me. But yeah, that's coming out, and then the big thing that is, I guess, sort of maybe on everybody's minds right now is at the PlayStation 4 conference when it was announced earlier in February. I think it was, I don't know if it was CEO or president, some older, higher up guy, came and he said they're going to be announcing a new Final Fantasy title at E3. And you know, given the fact that he's showing up at the PS4 conference, that kind of says, you know, it's not going to be, yeah, it's not going to be another remake of 4 for the PS Vita.
We've heard that before, though.
Yeah. So I mean, what do you guys expect? There were some rumors going around that, you know, we might actually. Yeah, we might. There were some rumors floating around. I mean, at this point, some people would say it's sort of, you know. It's not the Power Rangers panel. Favorite Red Ranger? No.
Jason. Jason for anybody?
Yeah. And anyway, okay. So there's rumors that, you know, Is it going to be Final Fantasy 15? Is it going to be Versus 13 finally, but rebranded as 15?
It's going to be
Is
that.
it, you know, what
Every last year,
should we
yeah.
should we open up the floor? What do you
Yeah,
guys think, and what are your like hopes and expectations for the new Final Fantasy game? Yeah.
Choco Racing 2.
Yeah. I would be satisfied with that. I would
That
be-
game was not appreciated enough.
Yeah.
That's
It's it's rare. Yeah. Anybody else? Anybody else? Do we, how, I guess one of the things that was brought up is how do you guys sort of feel about sort of the ongoing like westernization of the franchise? Like in regards, I guess, yeah, you can talk about that.
It's getting
yeah.
a little too easy. Like I finished FF13 in like the span of a week, whereas if I played FF7 it would, or 8 or 9, anything like that, it would have taken me at least 4 or 5 weeks
Yeah.
So
playing properly. Like even
is it a
like
length thing or is it just a?
it feels like it's too simple and that like anyone can pick it up and play.
Yeah.
As opposed to like people who are more used to dungeon crawling, grinding, and all that
I
stuff.
feel like 13 focused more on the end game though, because like after you finish FF7, you could beat Emerald, Ruby, and was that it? Is that all you could do?
Emerald, Ruby, and yeah, I think that
The
is
other
it.
mid bosses? Yeah. Whereas in 13, there were like all the Steve hunts.
Yeah. Yeah. In terms of side quests.
Yeah.
it
So the
really
game really
was-
started at when you finished.
Yeah, it was a, yeah, I don't know, in terms of, I think I was saying to you, 13.2 almost seemed like it was trying to appeal maybe to like the Monster Hunter market that is pretty big in Japan right now. I mean, but, yeah, Pokemon, things like that, where like the story of 13.2 you could probably breeze through in maybe 20 hours. I know a lot of people who just would,
Yeah, but if you want the proper ending,
yeah, that's
you
true.
gotta finish
Yeah.
100%, and that takes forever.
Yeah,
So it kind
that's
of worked
true.
the same way 10.2 did, where like there's a lot of branches. You can take a lot of branches from the main story.
Yeah,
Or
Whatever.
you can just finish
yeah.
online.
I mean, do you, another thing that gets brought up at probably every E3 is everybody sort of wants to push for something as big potentially as a Final Fantasy VII remake.
Yeah.
Square is, you know, they constantly say, yeah, we can't do that because,
It would take the value of the old Platinum games and drop it down. So
yeah, and it's a big economical thing for them too. Like, I think they exaggerate, but they said something like, if we were to recreate this in HD, it would take us like 20-something years. But I think that's an exaggeration. But when you consider that games like 13 are very sort of straight line up until a certain point, and even then it's not maybe as expansive as the past games were. Do you guys think that we'll ever sort of see a game like the old Final Fantasies again? Because it's hard to develop these big budget games that are very cinematic and have focus on all these other the characters, and some people say that Square should just drop out and make movies, but in terms of do you think some people have said would you be happy with what if we remade Final Fantasy VII for something like the PS Vita, where storage is smaller, it's less costly to make. It could be something like Crisis Core almost, like where you move around in a similar environment or something like that. Like,
Is that gonna happen?
yeah, yeah. I don't know.
Would you guys buy it?
I don't think it would happen, but yeah. You had a hand in the back, yeah.
I think the appeal of the original Final Fantasy up until last one I played, I didn't play 12, but 10 2 and all that, with the open world aspect.
Yeah,
You get early in the game, you can still run around and do everything, whereas
Yeah.
13 kind of forces you through up until you get to the battle.
yeah. Which is what they went before. When Versus was still pumping out news regularly, they promised. Nomura said, "We've got an open world that you guys can explore," and you saw some footage of it, and the combat looks very similar to something like Kingdom Hearts, where it's more action-based. But, and a lot of people are clamoring for that. They say release it, but hasn't come out. Almost, it was announced before the PS3 even released, and it was supposed to be an exclusive. Still haven't seen
We'll
it.
get into 13. We're versus 13.
Yeah, yeah,
That's a really big topic, I think.
yeah.
Is that a hand or? Okay, go for it.
Well, just that what I've noticed that they've
going towards a much more cinematic approach through like basically everything, including their combat system, which is the actual gameplay part of a game.
Yeah.
And it's sort of I feel like it's detrimental to the actual enjoyment of the game because yeah, you can get really you do really cool things in a cutscene, but like it's in a cutscene. You don't really feel like you're doing it. You're just pushing buttons to help along like with everyone on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I wanted to play Heavy Rain, I'd play Heavy Rain.
Yeah.
I think they're going in that direction just to appeal to like our ADD field society. I don't know. I feel like modern gamers, well, not you guys. I think you guys would like appreciate classic Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
But modern gamers wouldn't like. They wouldn't appreciate the turn-based ATV system that we've had before. What do you guys think? Or Cole?
Well, to be honest, it was when I first saw the Final Fantasy series, it was the battle system felt tough, felt like it wasn't for the faint of heart. Cause you have to, you're trying to strategize and you're just getting your butt kicked by the monsters.
Well, that's why you could choose between active and wait in the old days, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like
Yeah.
it doesn't give you as much of a challenge now in the new one.
Yeah.
Whereas the old one, you had turn-based, you had to think, like, am I going to use a potion here? As to where you can just have a healer, and then you can have just two people knocking down the guy. As to where Final Fantasy VII, when you're against a boss, you're actually have to use your mind, know what you're going to do at that moment, you know what I mean?
Unless you were over level.
Yeah,
Another thing to consider too is not only in terms of battle where, like if you guys remember in 13 there was actually an auto battle option. You could set it so that it would not automatically, the cursor would not automatically like place itself on that or whatever. But the fact that it gets added is kind of almost like a jab in the face to the old school fans or whatever. But not only that, in terms of the battle system being simplified, but you also have the simplification of things like the character development. I think they made a step forward for that in 13.2, where you had different ways you could branch out your character. Yeah, but when you look at 13, it was essentially if you grinded long enough or whatever.
Well, that's what the level cap was, right?
Yeah, which was a lot of people would object to on its own. Does anybody have sort of a favorite? Like, does anybody like we have any like Materia fans here? Any Materia system fans here?
Is this the same question? What's your favorite?
Yeah.
Sphere Grid fans.
Yeah. I mean, Sphere Grid is really good in the international version, actually, which apparently is the version that they're going to be releasing for the high definition.
We're getting
which is nice. Yeah, we're getting more stuff that Western release didn't get the first time. So that's nice. Yeah. What about Junction System? Does anybody like? Yeah.
It made pretty much no sense. But
Yeah.
You got used to it.
Yeah. It had a steep learning curve. Sphere Grid. I mean, I guess we've already asked Sphere Grid or.
Five star system. Yeah, that's a really good one.
Yeah.
My favorite though is I played 12 International, so I love the license more.
Right. Yeah. What about just classic job system? Does anybody like that?
I like jobs.
I think everybody here likes that. Most people. I don't know. I mean,
Tactics are nice jobs.
yeah. Tactics does as well.
Decide it's like we need killers, and we need something more strong.
Yeah,
You had
yeah.
that choice instead of like say Final Fantasy 1 where you chose your people, you were stuck with them like that, no matter
Yeah.
what.
Yeah. I mean, in the
And
case
they
of.
just turn out to be really useless.
Yeah, in the case of something like tactics, you could essentially say, oh, I'm going to do like an all ninja run or something, and then you could do that if you wanted to. So I'm sort of for the ongoing, pick how I want to play sort of thing. Yeah.
Okay. Technically, I think the mindset of which kind of job system we like depends basically, first of all, on our past experiences of the game.
Right,
So it depends
yeah.
on what, first of all, you were introduced
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
for me personally, I didn't like the job system personally just because, like she said up there, whatever you started with, you were stuck with for the game.
Yeah, that's
Versus like the materia and the junction version, you sort of had control over what the characters did.
right.
It immersed yourself more into the game.
Yeah.
So thus you were like, okay, well, I have to strategize this way, so I have to rearrange my party this way. Versus the original job system, whereas like if you went to a situation where like none of your people were experts at, you were pretty much screwed.
I think I didn't really like 7 system, because I found that in 7 all the characters were roughly equal. Like obviously Eris was a magic user. Also side note, Eris or Eris?
Eris.
I like the sound of Eris better, because I don't know, it's more aesthetically, or like it is getting Eris, but
Did you have some?
Just like on like the advancement system and stuff like that, right? My absolute favorite part of tactics and even the spear grid system in 10 was basically breaking the system. And once you get to the end game, like getting Yuna to do like damage cap on melee attacks with her because you put her through Orin's spear grid or something like that, or like dual wielding everything if you have like the ninja class. Like that was your reward at the end when you got to do some really ridiculous things with your characters because you just managed to get them through the entire system.
Yeah, I feel like stuff like that was possible in things like 7 as well with Materia, like to the point where you can chain things up to achieve these crazy results. That's why I really like the Materia system. Yeah,
Branching on that, like when I played 10, I was able to make my Riku, my Tidus, and my Yuna go through the circuit twice. So everyone was doing 99999 damage.
yeah,
Wow,
there you go.
freaking ridiculous.
Yeah, stuff like that is fun. Yeah. Yeah.
The only disappointing part for that was that when you did that with all your characters and then you went against Yevon, it was kind of too easy.
Yeah.
That was my only complaint.
Yeah.
well, that's what the Colosseum is for, right? Like the end boss is usually always a relatively easy battle.
That's what I like.
Yeah.
That's sort of what I like about 10 is that despite the fact that the end boss was sort of easy, you had the monster arena that balanced it out. Like we've been training like mad, we didn't do this to you, Yevon, but there's that stupid nest slug that we're still not strong enough to kill when it hides in its damn shell.
Yeah.
My favorite part about the 10 in the sphere grid was if you spent enough time, like for example, about 2 years ago I spent 600 hours into the game on International, I took out every node on the sphere grid and replaced it to the point where everybody had max stats, and no matter what I did, I was just like, well, that thing's dead, that thing's dead.
Yeah. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, eventually.
I really like the junction system because it's not only balanced as you progress, but it also rewards you for spending time doing extra stuff by making you completely broken.
Yeah, I feel like one of the big, I don't know if it ties into the junction system, but one of the big, I guess, like pet peeves with 8 that I had was the limit break system. And how it was just, well, I'm going to make my character low health and then I'm going to mash, like, cycling through the characters, it was triangle, to the point where it would activate said limit break. I mean, you could avoid that, I guess, but
I think that's a risk reward thing. Like when you do that, you are in danger of getting one shot.
Yeah, that's true. You said that.
There was a way around that. There was a status you could put all your characters into aura and you could constantly do limit breaks.
Yeah,
But
there's that too.
it only increases the chance of it. It doesn't actually. No, and it would only last a few seconds too.
Yeah.
It's even better when you make your whole party invincible.
Yeah, it's kind of, yeah. Did you?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to the junction system. My preference for it came because of the fact that not only can you can individualize your characters and add status and elementary stuff on it, you can actually do that to the GS, where you can find items to add abilities or take abilities away and basically break the game.
Yeah.
There's a lot of options for customization.
Earlier, someone mentioned like how there's differences in difficulties. Like some people were saying it's too hard to too easy. I always found like what I found with 10 anyways was that if you wanted to just play for the story, and like you could just get through the story really easily. Like it wasn't that hard to go through the story as long as you, like if you fought every single battle and you didn't run from anything, you basically have enough XP to get through any of the boss fights at the end, right? And but there's always that added path along, like the Coliseum and all the other stuff that like made it that added challenge for people who wanted a challenge. I feel like a difficulty tier system is important for FF because like some people play purely for the story, some people play for the gameplay, some people like in the middle.
Yeah, that's true.
So
yeah, it worked out in 10 pretty well, but again, I think it works in 13 too. Like you could breeze through the story if you want, and then when you're done, you could go to the sequence. Sorry, you had a question?
Coming back to the next gen console release, like the one thing I miss most about Final Fantasy games is the world map. Like I find what they do is like the more they create a new game, they add new stuff to it, which is great, but they take the basic fundamentals that make it a Final Fantasy game. I like that's really disappointing. So like next gen, I'd like to see like a world map at least. And then, you know, with those beautiful cutscenes would be so kick-ass too. So, I don't know, in terms of storyline, it's Final Fantasy, right? None of them really have any correlation except for the Dash 2 games.
Yeah, it's pretty, I mean, in the case of, even if they, I find like sort of my position on it is, even if they can't give us sort of the conventional world map that a lot of us love, I really like how they handled it in things like 10, where when you would move to like that game sort of had its own world map. It's just you couldn't traverse it yourself, kind of. Like you would go from area to area and it would say this is where you're going or whatever. And things like that I find really add to the immersion. I found that one of my problems with 13 was just it felt like I was just like going through these locations and I had no idea like where I was or any sense of the world I was in, kind of.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. It was just oh now I'm you know in this you know beach city. Now I'm in this forest. Now and you would essentially go from start to end and then you would get a cutscene that would transition you into this new area and I felt like they didn't do that too well.
Going back to your earlier question in regards to like if they were to remake 7, would you prefer first the PlayStation or it was ported on the Vita?
Yeah.
I don't see the problem of doing it on the Vita just because of how popular Crisis Core was.
Yeah.
They did Crisis Core really well. So I don't see why they wouldn't be able to translate that into Final Fantasy 7. That being said, they've also done quite a bit for 7 recently, like a lot. Maybe not so much recently, but they've done a movie, they've done a sequel game. They've done the prequel game and then a prequel to that game.
Yeah.
Like if you count Before Crisis.
Yeah.
So really they've done quite a bit for it already.
It has its own sort of compilation for that.
Yeah.
Was there?
Going back to the world map thing, right? And it's one of my favorite parts about Final 1, and which is why I still really like Final Fantasy 1, was the entire progression, like how you went from canoe to a ship to an airship, and how it was, you really had the sense of, like, you're moving up in the world, you can go explore all these new islands, and once you get the airship and you're like, I can circumnavigate the entire world, and it was the coolest feeling ever back when I played it, which was a long time ago, but, like, you don't have that same, I don't feel like you get the same sense of like, an expansive world that you can explore, like in later. No, well, I didn't really play 13 till the end, because I started to play after, but so I don't really know. But I really like that entire. You get more tools to explore the world as you go on.
Yeah.
Do you think that would work in a modern day game though, just based on, because I think they did it that way based on hardware functionality, right? Like you'd have to load every time you ran into a city or a dungeon or whatever. But now with all the like the way 13 did it, there were no load times almost between cities. Like was it a system like that work? Did you picture it happening?
Well, I was going to say, like, I think maybe it's more of like an aesthetic thing because you see things like what you were mentioning now, it can be done in modern games. Things like, has anybody here played Ni no Kuni? Which just, you know, it's still kind of a new release for the PS3, but that was very conventional in, hey, now you have a boat, now you have, you know, a dragon to fly around on, and there are cities and they are separated, and you have this world map, and it's pretty big considering, you know, but you know, I feel like stuff like that is possible, but.
They could do them.
Can I pause you guys for a second?
Yep.
Yeah, guys. Hi. My name's Iffy. I'm sorry for being late. This panel wasn't supposed to exist at this time because I had work till 4.
Yeah.
But did we introduce ourselves and our favorite Final Fantasy?
Yep.
Yeah, what's your favorite?
Oh, FF8 because I started with it.
Yeah.
So I really liked it. 7 was good, and I hate 9.
Yeah.
I love Kuja, but I couldn't finish it. I hated it. I couldn't finish it.
So actually, just because we were talking about like stuff like the compilation and things like that, I actually had this question sort of posed to me by a friend recently, and he said, do you find it odd that a game like Final Fantasy VIII, despite its sort of like sales, which were pretty high, and I think part of the fact was due to the fact that it was a follow-up to 7. It's obviously going to sell pretty well. People sort of, he said, do you find it odd that that's a game that didn't really receive any other sort of recognition from Square? Like when you look at the earlier games, like 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, you have these remasters on PSP or Nintendo DS or whatever. You had the 5 release on PlayStation 1. You had 6 on Game Boy Advance. You don't have a remake of 7, but you have all these other entries in the series. Then there's 8, and it's just nothing. You guys like it's kind of weird.
Well,
9 as well.
Well, I
9 as
have
well.
to argue with you about that.
Yeah.
Because 7, when 7 came out for the PS1, a whole new generation, a whole new group of people got into Final Fantasy.
Yeah, yeah.
PS1. A lot of them couldn't go back. For me, I couldn't go back and play 1 through 6.
Yeah.
So how I see it is they remade it for the newer generation who was playing the DS or the Advance, the Game Boy Advance back in the day. They just remade them so they could get into the Final Fantasy, even though they didn't take flying. But they didn't need to remake 8 and 9 because that generation already had them.
It happened like at an awkward middle stage when it's too early to remake or port, but it's too late to like make a sequel to.
Yeah, and you still see releases, like 8 is still on the PlayStation Store, things like that. You can play it on your PS3, you can play it on your Vita. Yeah, and same with 9. And like you do see like cameos of those characters and things like Dissidia or so you do see, but he brought it up. He's like, do you think it's, generally a lot of, my experience, I don't know if it's the same with everybody, I find people either tend to like 8 or tend to hate it. I mean, I'm in the like category, but it seems, do you think there's a particular reason for that, despite the fact that every other game pretty much in the series, minus 9, which I feel like 9 was kind of just Square giving a throwback to the older games at the time before they said okay we're going to go full on into this sort of new fantasy theme with 10. Do you guys think what would you guys think if we had like an 8-2 or something like that, or we had some sort of addition to that?
I'll do it.
Yeah, there's somebody heads up. We're gonna start there.
I think the follow up to 8 was like to 7 was like you were saying, 7 received a huge audience, but then it sort of changed. Like the theme between 7 and 8 changed drastically as it focused more on a love story. And I guess at the time, mostly guys would play video games, right? So boys around the age of like 10 to 14 aren't really into the whole idea of a love story between this badass guy with a gunblade and this random girl. They'd rather see someone with orange spike hair swinging around a giant metal sword.
Yeah.
Just go nuts.
Yeah.
But not only that, I also think that the materia system was a lot easier to grasp a hold of than the junctioning system, because you could just fill in a slot, bam, bam, bam. You got fire, all, and like Kiraga. And then here you got like junction, fire to attack, and then to your defense, you put warp or whatever. And it seemed like it was too complex right away. It was like a weird jump. But then I personally loved 8. It's one of my favorites. And like Squall is just amazing. And I thoroughly enjoyed the love story between him and Rinoa. And I would personally like to see some sort of spin-off, like a prequel, like that focus on Laguna and Squall or something like that, or even like an indirect tie-in.
Yeah.
Except all their stories were pretty much concluded. You got Laguna and Squall's backstory.
Yeah, like everyone, like they tied up all the loose ends, whereas 7 sort of left some wiggle room for prequels, sequels, animated features, etc.
I think I like it where it is now. So like you don't want to milk a franchise the same way.
Yeah.
I would like to see a CGI movie of Final Fantasy VIII, like just remade, because that would be like, it was a good story. It had everything to it, but like I found it confusing when you like slept and you went to this dream guy.
You all agree we want to see a Final Fantasy VII remake?
No.
No.
Okay, no, let me change it. We want to see a Final Fantasy VII remaster.
No.
You don't want to see it.
The reason it wouldn't work is because the fan base is so big that there's going to be, because the fan base is so big, a lot of people are not going to get what they want. And what that ends up doing is a lot of people get disappointed and just turned off.
Same game, Advent Children graphics, are you sure?
Yes, I agree.
Same game, no, don't change it.
No, I
Same
agree
game,
with him
Advent
because
Children graphics.
when you play FF7, like it's like a good 50-hour game, depending on like how quick you play through it. And there's a lot you can do. Very few people I know want to do all of that again. So sure, like you have like pretty graphics on Cloud and Barret, and you get to see all the scruff on his face. But it's not gonna do all that much. It's gonna be the exact same game, just look different. Like look at FF4. We played it twice now, at least, maybe even 3 times for those who've got the PSP version of it. But
See,
it's
the reason why I say that, is because of, look at Ocarina of Time, right? Great game, made history. You bring it back into a console, or a handheld, and it did not get the same thing, and a lot of people were very upset about that because there was so much hype.
Did they change the game at all?
They did.
They did.
Easier.
They made it easier, and then they also put the Master Quest in it, and the mirrored version. And a lot of people were let down by that, and that's the same thing that would happen if they did it for Final Fantasy VII.
It's still more a port than a remake, right?
A port would be fine.
It's essentially the same game.
You stretching for the sky.
Okay. Pretty much, you're gonna get people who are gonna be all like, I want to see this game remastered, just because it was a classic, just because it was something. It's a throwback to most people's childhood at this point in time. A lot of people are gonna want to play it again in better graphics because they've seen what they've done with all these other games, and you're like, you know what, 7 was great. I'd like to play again with these graphics. Me personally, I have to say honestly, and I mentioned this before as well, they've already done quite a bit with that. They've done this story. They did the sequel movie. They did Advent Children. Then they did Dirge of Cerberus. Then they've done.
We are.
They've also done Before Crisis. They pretty much explored that story about as much as they can explore it, unless of course you count the ending of Dirge and figure, you know what, there's another chapter you can do about, I guess. But personally, I think honestly they've done as much as they can with it.
One thing I was going to touch on real quick, because a friend of mine brings it up all the time, and he says he's generally for the remake, but he brought this up and he said I think it's maybe one of the problems that Square Enix's Final Fantasies, one of the problems they have now is just he finds, and maybe it's nitpicky, whatever, he finds there's a lack of charm in the games. Things like, compare something like 13, where you have a very brooding, angry character like Lightning, who is just pissed off all the time, basically at everything, and then any form of enthusiasm from Snow, most people just disregard as annoying or whatever. Compare that to something that is both as charming and as funny as the Barret date from Final Fantasy VII. Do you think it's we don't see that anymore? We don't we don't see that as often, or we don't see someone like Zell from 8 who just eats hot dogs to the point. To the point where so one of the things he brings up is if they remade it, do you think they would somehow be able to keep that intact with sort of the way they're going with their games and how it's more dramatic, more melodramatic, more yeah. Like do you think they would be able to hit the nail on that, or do you think it was it was as good when we had these Lego block characters?
Before we throw it to you guys, see, I do not think that's possible.
Yeah.
Because of the way society's evolved. Back in the day, video games were like, they were the threat. All your parents hated Mortal Kombat, and you still played it because you loved it. And so you could get away with things like a cross-dressing main character, a best friend who gets kidnapped and taken to a brothel. You could get away with that. You can't do that stuff nowadays. It's not going to happen. Imagine remastering Final Fantasy VII with Advent Children graphics and then cross-dressing Cloud. That's just not going to happen. You won't get it.
And it's the case that if they change that, then you're going to get people who are saying it's not a perfect remake. So do we want to throw it?
Sure. Guys, someone talking.
In terms of charm and character, I honestly personally feel that charm hit a peak with 7, and the reason I think there's a peak with 7 is because it's not just the main characters who are charming and funny, it's also the bad guys. I love the Turks.
Yeah.
Like the Wutai side quest where Elena is all fired up. Yeah, we gotta fight in Reno. It's like, shut up, we're here on vacation. It's like, I've never seen another Final Fantasy game with villains that memorable, as well as heroes were that memorable.
Okay, I'll take the next person, but let's try to keep our comments short. We only have 15 minutes. Richard, let's try to keep our comments short. I think I want to keep this going.
The trends in all gaming, even past Final Fantasy, is that people who are making serious games nowadays are too afraid of letting their games be silly or to be happy even. Gas.
Yeah.
Like they're always going for this serious, brooding main character who's broods and serious everywhere and has big swords because
they changed that for 10 though.
Yeah, they changed that for 9.
Sure. That was a game.
Whatever you want to call them.
Well, they try to make a happy game like 10-2 or 13-2. People hate it. But what about the why didn't it sell very well? Why didn't 13-2 sell very well?
They tried to counteract the brooding hero with Tidus from 10, and it worked. They pulled it off. They were able to pull it off. 9 was a throwback. I guess nobody liked. No, it's not. It's a love or hate. It's like 12. You love it or you hate it.
But even 12 had had characters like Balthier, who is essentially he's the Han Solo of that game. I think they can still accomplish that. It's more like why aren't they doing it?
Okay, hand. Oh, you put your hand up too late. I have to put her.
I think there is a lot of argument to say that the charm in the game, the early the first next generation games, that is true. After you get into all of these insane graphics, yes, they're good. Ultimately, they also take away from the story
And that's Square's biggest problem currently. They spend a lot of time. They have had administrative troubles with people leaving ever since 7, so that may have to be affecting it. I think one of them, I'm not sure if it's 13, the story completely changed. I'm not sure which one it is. One of the Final Fantasies, the story completely diverted. Somebody left.
That was 12.
That was 12,
yeah.
Somebody left?
Amano was in I think he was in a car accident. And he actually had he had a different sort of envision, of what he wanted 12 to be. He actually wanted Bosch to be the main character in 12. And a lot of people were like, why didn't that happen? But I think I forget the details, but he was involved in some sort of accident and he had to leave. And that's when, it was passed along or whatever, and they made Dom the main character.
I heard that the original premise for 10 was actually supposed to be was originally in line to be a sequel for 8, but then they decided, we'll just separate it and put it in its own game as well.
Never heard that before.
So I think that was another
kind of connected that they made between the two.
The whole dream.
Just to quickly touch on that, actually, the guy who. Going on the Bosch thing, the guy who actually was originally handling 12 was also the same guy who did Tactics, the first Tactics. So, I mean, given the fact that it's still set in Ivalice and stuff, you might have gotten a game where the story is of that caliber, but Final Fantasy 12, but accident happened, got passed along, whatever.
So who here has played 13-2? Just show a hand.
Who has beaten it?
I have twice.
You beat it twice.
You have to use a guide.
It was good. The game was good.
Yeah,
The
who bought the
gameplay
DLC?
is good.
Who bought the DLC? Oh, okay.
I bought some of it. And then I stopped after.
Who here is looking forward to 13.3? Fewer hands. I love it.
Yeah. It's kind of iffy. I feel like maybe the excitement will ramp up closer we get to release, but I'm not too sure. Yep.
You were talking about how Final Fantasy VII remaster probably wouldn't have as much of a hype because there's so many people who wouldn't get what they want. But at the same time, I find it weird that it wouldn't get a hype because I find the Final Fantasies have a good replayability to them. Even the older ones where you've spent like 60 hours, I've played 9 about 3 or 4 times now with different character names. I finally actually named him Zidane.
Yeah.
But another problem I see with giving the games remasters is that they're probably going to give them voices.
That's true.
Which
Yeah.
wouldn't be so bad. I mean, I've heard the voices for Dissidia, which worked
Yeah.
out fine.
Is there anybody here who was actually a fan of the voicing, like the voice cast of Seven from like Advent Children?
I like it.
You got the guy. You got General Hospital guy voicing Cloud. But yeah. Sorry. What else?
But like I the voices in Dissidia worked fine for the characters. I find.
Yeah.
I mean, I love Pooja, and at first the idea of giving them voices scared me. It's like, oh my god. But even though he sounds kind of gay, I think it works. But what scares me about that too is that they're going to use the version, and this is just a pet peeve for me, they're going to use the version they have of the names. Like, we were talking about Ken earlier, when you mentioned Titus.
Yeah.
I hate the way they pronounce that.
It's one of the names.
Dissidia
says Titus.
Yeah, I mean on the subject of something like voice acting, I know that there are a lot of people who I think it's getting better. I think in terms of when you look at something like the laughing scene from Final Fantasy,
ready for that in HD?
and then you consider the fact that the same guy who is voicing, Titus, same guy, like he's carried over, so he's gotten better. I think that's something that happens with voice actors. Is typically they're going to improve at their craft or whatever. In terms of 7, whether or not it would sell, I think it would sell. I think if they came out and said we're making a remake of Final Fantasy VII, I think that you're going to have a huge popularity surge to it. I think you're going to have a good response overall. I think Square is maybe saving that as kind of their trump card in the event that things go bad. In terms of whether or not people would like it, I think that would come after the fact. After it releases, I think people are going to pick apart what they may or may not like.
They need something to save their company, and if anything, I think that might be it.
Yeah.
Because we can all admit that Squares isn't doing so hot right now.
Yeah, well, they have a new CEO who took over, and he's promising to clean it up, but, it sort of remains to be seen, but he just took off.
We're running out of time.
Any comments or questions?
Anything you want to throw in?
Or any, yeah?
I have a question. Why don't they make a remastered Final Fantasy 6?
Yeah, that's another thing. Where's 6? They did for Game Boy. Game Boy Advance. Yeah.
All they did was add character portraits.
Yeah, and people sort of harp on it because the music was not good with Wall. Yeah. Or 3DS maybe.
There was a rumor because worked on a DS remake. Well, there was a rumor that 5 to 6 they tried for it.
Yeah.
There was trailers on the 3DS.
Yeah.
Which is what I'm actually kind of hoping for.
Yeah. No, I'm one of the Yep.
I know. Just when it comes to port overs in general, like something that a lot of people may overlook. I mean, I'm not pointing any fingers at anyone here specifically, but it takes a lot of time to make a game. So it'd be a lot. I'm going into game development and I'm learning all this new shit. It's freaking ridiculous.
Yeah.
But it's like taking. If you were to take FF7 and turn it into Advent Children graphics, you're making everything from scratch.
Yeah, and that's
So you're
their
making,
argument.
You're making
That's
this
their argument.
piece of hair
Yeah.
from scratch as opposed to like a blocky, spiky hair.
That's
and
their argument.
And it'd be easier. It makes more sense that they're doing 10 as opposed to FF7 because like the polygons are a lot closer. The character models are there. The movement is all there. You just gotta like clean up
They
stuff
already
here
have
and there, right? But similar stuff with like let's say 6. 6 has always ever been sprite based. If they were to turn that into a full-fledged 3D game, it would take a lot of time and effort.
It was also from around the time. It was from around the
They
point.
have done it, but it's still lengthy and it's hard.
Seven came out around the time too when people were sort of still trying to figure out how to develop 3D games.
Exactly.
So that's why. That's our.
But
that's
they already have the trailer for Final Fantasy VII, so they can just go off of that.
The thing is, they already have the 3D models from Advent Children. It
Yeah.
shouldn't be that hard to port. I know it's different. I know.
It's
but
different
you've
from
already
a
got
2.5 hour movie to like a 60+ hour game.
Yeah, but you got your you've got I don't know. I don't do computers so. But a number.
Hey, rapid fire.
We'll talk
through. Yeah.
On the deal with 7, I think the main reason why they said they would make it in HD was because all the sprites, there's like hundreds and hundreds of individual sprites, and that takes an insane amount of time to go and redo in HD.
Yeah.
Would it be worth it?
That's because somewhat the problem with the new Final Fantasy being really serious is they're starting to be taken more of a serious form of art instead of just gaming, and it's kind of flipped games from kind of the quirky, charming stuff that you used to see in the old days, where it's, they want it more seriously because it's not just the game designers, it's like the artists who feel like they have to put something forward there.
But you guys are making it sound like the cost of porting 7 over would not be worth it.
It's not that it's not worth it. It's just
It may be hard.
It's gonna be
but
hard.
it would be
It
definitely
could be
worth it.
ultimately worth it. But like, if you look at it from a
If you're looking at it from a company standpoint, why would you do it?
potential loss of money. Potential loss of money.
Before you wrap up,
Guys,
before we wrap up,
there's a photo shoot. There's a Final Fantasy photo shoot happening
Have you watched my movie?
across the street at the
Yeah,
TCC
that's
at
one.
7 or something. You guys should show up. If you're there.
Thanks for coming, guys.
Coming out.
No way.
If the game was exposed to the amount of money that they would spend on that game, film and animation studio.
There's a Persona photo shoot right after the.
If they don't make the money for the game when it comes out, right? If they lose funds, they do that.
Don't take me like this.
I think it's for 9 series.